Okay, perfect. So thank you all so much for being here. Hopefully more people will be filtering in soon, but I'll just add them. I'm sure my introduction can be kept short. Basically, I'm Pooja. I'm the founder of Devie. Devie is a digital coach that supports parents of toddlers and preschoolers to understand and manage their children's behavior and build their social and emotional skills in the process. We are part of our mission in terms of supporting parents is to make expertise and parenting expertise accessible. So we are really excited to have Dr. Cindy Hovington with us today to share how we can support children's cognitive development through play. So just a quick about Dr. Hovington. Cindy is the founder of Curious Neuron, an evidence-based parenting resource. She obtained her doctorate degree in neuroscience from McGill University, where she studied emotions and cognitive skills in schizophrenia. After becoming a mom, she realized that many people offer parents unsolicited advice. I'm sure we can empathize, which can lead to doubt or confusion for parents. She launched Curious Neuron to offer caregivers science-based advice, giving them the confidence to make informed parenting decisions. You can join the Curious Neuron family, and we'll send the links to Curious Neuron and her platform as well after this call. Sorry, let me admit these two people. Yeah, so we will be sharing those links after this call as well. But for now, I will hand it over to Cindy. Thanks so much for being here.
Thank you, Pooja. Hi, everyone. I'm so happy to be here to talk about this topic. You know, I often talk about parenting styles and play, but I'm so happy that Pooja asked me to connect it to cognition because that's my background and that's what I love talking about. I think the end goal of this presentation or this chat is really that at the end, you could see all the ways that your child is learning as they're playing, and that you'll reassess your home and everything that you have in your home to realize that there are so many opportunities to play and to learn. You don't have to go out and buy a bunch of new toys. You know, there's just, we are, you know, one of them that we can help our kids learn. So there's a lot. So let me share my screen with you. And I'll stop, you know, we'll go through it. But if there are any questions, feel free to put them in the chat box. And, you know, we can answer a few as I'm going and a few at the end, whatever you guys want. So, okay, now I want to talk about why play is important just for one quick second, because research has shown that the amount of free play that children are getting is diminishing greatly, especially when they're reaching preschool. And this shouldn't be the case because there's so much learning when it comes to play. But even here, so I'm from Montreal, Canada, hence the French accent. Here, we just launched preschools and elementary schools because it used to be separate from the elementary school system. And parents were arguing that they didn't want any playtime. They wanted a little bit, but what they wanted was that their child sit in a chair and learn their alphabets and learn how to read and write and so on. And that is important, but we have to remember that there's a lot going on in play, and they're developing skills that'll help them throughout their lives. It's not just about learning our alphabets. That is part of it. But today I want to show you the bigger picture. We're not talking about numbers. We're not talking about shapes and colors. That is part of cognitive development and the developmental milestones. And you can reach out to the CDC and you can Google CDC developmental milestones. You'll get all of those. But today we're looking at the bigger picture. Let me just see. Oh, I see some people. Hi. All right. So what are cognitive skills before we go on? And this is just the way that we think, the way that we learn and explore and problem solve in our environment. And in the big scheme of things for a child, it's just the way that they start understanding the world that they are in. An infant, if we start looking at cognitive milestones in infants, when they are taking an object and bringing it to their mouths, they're realizing, okay, there's something there and I could use my body to go get it. And then once I coordinate, I could bring this to my mouth. That is a huge developmental milestone. And we kind of don't really realize it. We're like, oh yeah, okay, they're putting everything in their mouth now. But that step between not doing it and doing it is huge in the brain. That's a lot of neurons. So, you know, I love talking about cognitive skills because they're little things that we don't realize and we take for granted because we're used to doing it. Planning and organizing, for example, remembering when you're going to the grocery store, that is a cognitive skill. So we'll look at those today. And then we'll link them to play. What is our role in play? So there were a few questions that came in and we're going to touch upon that. So basically, the way that I like to look at play is more than anything else, it is child-led because they are the masters of play. In fact, I would even argue I had forgotten how to play. And once I have 3 kids, I have a 1-year-old, a 3-year-old, and a 5-year-old. And after, I had been in grad studies for a few years and then I started having kids and I had kind of forgotten to like let loose, get messy and play in the mud and play in the snow. And it reminded me that there's some like relaxing part of it too as a parent, and that they know what they're doing. Here I was reading all these books and all these research studies, like what can I do to help my child learn while they play? And I would look at my daughter and she was scooping, snow or sand and putting it in a bucket and then emptying it. And you're realizing that that's learning because they have to realize once they keep scooping and they reach the top of that bucket and it overflows, oh, wait a minute, I should, stop filling it up when it's at the top and then I could build a castle and so on and so forth. That's learning. Filling up a bucket of water and it overflows, that's learning. So there are really so many opportunities around us and our children. Being there when they need us. So when we're in our home and, we need to step away, sometimes it's not the right time because they're going to say, come play with me, come play with me. And I get that. But it might not have been the right time to step away. So playing with them a little bit when they ask that, just 5 minutes maybe, and then stepping back. And that's what I mean by being there when they need us, allows them to nurture their independent play. I have it on the next slide, but I'll mention it. Saying go play when we need to have time on our own, it doesn't work. There's no scientific proof about it, but I'm pretty sure that it doesn't work 100% of the time. There's a lot more to getting them to play on their own and independently. And sometimes just being there a little bit and then stepping back allows them to do this. And then the end, I wrote inquiry-based learning because we are a huge part of their learning. Asking questions like, why do you think that happens? Or what would happen if, really builds on learning skills. And we'll look at the learning skills in a few seconds. So I like to look at to break down play into 3 things. Play and learning opportunities are really all around us. And I hope that that's part of what you take home today. And when it comes to play, we have to let our child lead the way. It's really, they are the boss of play and they get it. And then with the third one, simplicity. I really, really hope that I could show you how simple it could be if we just have the right environment. And half the things that we use in play that are truly educational toys, not the ones that we're paying lots of money for sometimes, but the ones in our house. A old makeup bag, for example, has a zipper perhaps, or a little button that you have to like snap. There's a lot of learning in that, and you can use that for pretend play. You can use that as a motor activity where they have to figure out how to zip it and how to button it. So there are lots of opportunities there. All right, just, and again, if you have some questions for independent play, this could be, I literally have a 1-hour workshop on independent play because there's a lot that goes behind it, but a few kind of key points to touch on is, let's not forget, or let's be reasonable when it comes to what we expect from our kids sometimes. I'll have parents say, why can't my 10-month-old play for, half an hour? I just need to clean. That's a long time in baby time. and their brain is learning how to stay focused only starting around 10 months. That's when focused attention starts to develop. So, and as a measure, so I keep going through the research to see if I could find some specific numbers, but there aren't. And I think there's actually a good reason behind that. Every child is different, and that's what it reminds us of. But a little kind of way to gauge it is double your child's age in minutes, and that's about how long they should be super focused. So a 1-year-old, 2 minutes, that's good. And I know that we need more time than that sometimes, but that's a good start for their development. A 2-year-old, 4 minutes, about 4 or 5 minutes if they're focused, completely focused. and they might become engaged in play and play much longer. But I'm talking about you not being there and looking and, you know, saying like, okay, continue this activity, and they're really focused. And being focused is two things: focusing on something, but also not kind of ignoring what is happening. So that's a really big cognitive skill. So they should be able to be focused, completely focused for about that time. Actually, it's 2 to 3 times their age. Go play doesn't work. That's what I said. Optimal play space. We're going to look at an optimal play space. Minimalism in playing is the best because it allows them to focus in. There's actual research that shows as little as 4 toys in their environment allows them to focus in a lot more on what they're doing. And if we think about it, I know that having a playroom that has lots of bins, so if you see behind me, I have these sort of shelving units all around my house, in the playroom, in the living room. And these are from IKEA, and they come with boxes. And I remember when I had my first child, I just packed it up with boxes because they fit so well. And then it's all the same color. And I'm like, wow, that's really neat. And it was filled with toys inside. But then my daughter would pull one of those little boxes out and dump it upside down and look around and then walk away. And I realized that there's no reason to put them that way. And I'll show you a picture of my play space. But basically, you want to make it inviting. You want to minimize what's in front of them and maybe put 1 or 2 on the shelf. And I'll show you a picture of that soon. And the types of toys do matter. Toys that you press a button and it launches the car. That's fun. Maybe for a minute, maybe for 2, something that you press a button and it does something, but then that's it. That could be fun, but again, you might have to rotate that in and out of your playroom or play area because your child might not play as long as a train set or Legos or blocks. And these are called open-ended toys. There's a lot or pretend play stuff like a doctor set or veterinarian set, stuffed animals or dolls. These have a lot more functionality. Like you can do a lot more with them compared to these like one function or one item toys. And my golden rule when I'm buying a toy is my child going to play with it or is it going to entertain my child? There's a difference. If my child has to kind of manipulate it, even a baby, if my child has to squish it, my baby, and to make the sound and keep crumpling it versus pressing a button, it's entertaining them versus them pressing it and squishing it to hear like a crinkling sound, let's say one of those balls, or shaking it in a rattle, rather than just kind of pressing a button and it does the entertaining for them. So there's a big difference. And those kinds of toys really lead to independent play. So these are pictures of play areas that I have in my home. The one on the left is my main play space, my living room, and I have just 4 shelves. And I wanted to show you the example because you see one truck. I have a box of trucks, but I rotate which truck is there, which cars I put. I make it colorful. The doctor set on the top right. There's a lot more that comes in that set, but it comes in a bag and I've tested it. So they got this actually this past Christmas, and I've placed the bag on the shelf and they'll empty it and I'll get mad because they make a mess and they leave it there at the end of the day and they didn't really play with it. Versus if I take a quarter of the items that are in that bag, remove it out of the bag and place it nicely, all of a sudden, see, there's a little tray with 2 medicine bottles. They play with it and they know exactly that the 2 medicine bottles belonged on the tray, and then they place it back and everything is good. So it works out well for everybody, but they also play with it longer. It's kind of like inviting. It's like a fridge filled with leftovers is not as inviting as preparing a nice meal on a platter that's nice and fresh. We feel more connected to it. And it's the same thing with play. Books, I also rotate the books. So all of these toys will stay for about a week, maybe 2, maybe 3. It depends on them. They lead the way. And then as soon as I see they're not playing with something like their Toy Story figurines, that rotates out if I notice a couple days of them not using it. Or the rainbow, if they're not building with it anymore, that rotates out and I bring in something else. So I try to change it up a little bit. Are there any questions? Where's the chat? I don't see the chat. Do I? I don't.
Sorry, I'm looking at the chat box. I don't see any messages on it, but you should be able to see it too.
Oh, that's weird. Okay. All right. So skills, cognitive skills that we have seen in research that are also very important to academics. And I broke it up into academic and overall success. In academics, it's creativity, flexibility that allows you to say, okay, this isn't working, what else can I do? And that sort of flexibility has led to stronger mathematical skills, which makes sense when you're trying to figure out a problem. Discipline, being able to stop yourself from doing something and thinking through it, that's a huge cognitive skill that a child needs to learn. Inhibitory control, that's when you're, like I was talking about, focused attention. So let's say you're on the bus and you're reading a book. You also have to inhibit or block out the sounds that are coming in. And that's a huge cognitive skill. So that's another skill that has been shown to help in school. And the main one that I highlighted here is executive functions. If you Google executive functions and Harvard University, they have a PDF that breaks down different activities that you can do between the ages of 6 months to teenage years. And that way it could guide you in terms of, okay, my child is 2 or 5, what can I do with them to develop these executive function skills? And the reason why these skills are some of the most important ones, it involves organizing and planning and memory and problem solving skills. So these are all very big, because when you think about, let's say, a school project, the teacher will say, even as a young child, okay, what's your favorite animal? Zebra. Okay, well, now you have to prepare a presentation, an oral presentation for the classroom on zebras. Okay, that's a huge undertaking. What do I do first? What do I search zebra on Google? Do I search food? What do they eat? You have to think of the plans. And then what do I prepare first? My poster, my presentation, it's humongous. And I remember about 4 or 5 years ago, I had put out a survey or poll for my community, and it was about 65%, and I don't know if they were all honest, but 65% of parents said that they will end up completing their kids' homework or their projects in school because of, they didn't say executive function skills, but this is what led me to realize I had to talk about it a lot more. They said they don't plan, they're never done on time, they're not organizing themselves. And this is why it's so important for us to start working on these skills before they start school. And I'll show you how soon, because this will help them in their academics. And then other cognitive skills that are very important, social emotional skills, arguably the second most important one, because if our children are not able to control their emotions or not able to socially connect and have, these kinds of relationships in schools, they distance themselves, then there are mental health issues that might come up. So it's really important that we teach them that before. The question I've received the most now in the past year is, what will happen because of the pandemic to my child's social and emotional skills? And my answer to that is, before the age of 5, arguably, you are the most important one that can help them with that. Our environment. I posted something on Instagram last week. It was a study that showed the top 5 most important factors that contribute to a child having tantrums, which is their social emotional development. And it was home environment that was first at 20-something%. And then parenting styles, which was another 20-something%. Those are the top 2, showing that we are the most important people in our children's lives. The environment we create in our home, how we speak to our other children, how we speak to our child, how we speak to our partners, our friends and family members on the phone, somebody on the road that cut us off. That is teaching our child their social emotional skills, how we control ours. Gratitude. There's lots of research around gratitude, and this is not necessarily, this is more of a characteristic, but it's a skill that has been shown to lead to better mental well-being and less stress in children and in parents. So I'll touch upon that later at the end. Intrinsic motivation. Having these charts at home, they're important, and trying to show our children, if you do this, you'll get that. And we do it here because sometimes there's no other way. However, we have to also hope and try to do this through play to show them that they have to motivate themselves. When that tower of blocks falls down, it's okay, build it back up again. And that it's through play that they'll build this kind of stuff, these kinds of skills. Growth mindset is realizing that by practice, I will get better. I was not born being bad at math. I just have to work a little harder. And that's the kind of mindset that leads to better academic skills and resilience. Shapes and numbers, we won't talk about them today, but they are important as well. Just a quick view of executive function skills. So they refer to them as the sort of I forgot the word now, the person, the air traffic controller of your brain. And it's a huge umbrella term that links to memory and organization and juggling many tasks together. Again, focusing attention on something, planning, self-control, critical thinking. And when you look at that, I mean, that's everything you need a child to have in school. So these are really important skills. All right, so let's talk about play. Building and blocks and construction. There are some studies that look at Legos, and they show that a child who's playing a lot with Legos builds like these sort of math concepts more than if you don't have that much kind of building block skills. And not besides math skills, focus attention. When your child is in that moment of building something and are entirely focused, that is, remember when I said let your child lead the way? That's when, as a parent, if you were playing with them and your brain sort of wants to say, no, wait, don't put that block there, it's gonna fall. It's kind of your turn to like step back and let them lead the way. If it falls, perfect, because that's when there's a learning opportunity. That's when they'll realize, okay, when my tower is leaning a little bit more to the left, what do I have to do? Our role is really the facilitator and saying, what can you do? I know it keeps falling. What can we do to make it, stronger? Or what can we do at the bottom? Should we make it stronger by putting more blocks? Through questioning rather than doing it. But it's much easier sometimes because we see when they're getting frustrated. I've seen it with my kids. Building blocks in my home are my favorite way of, one, helping them build their resilience and their planning skills and organization skills of saying, okay, how can we build the tallest tower? And you don't even need blocks. You can have a bunch of paper cups and ask them to build the tallest tower with paper cups or plastic cups or whatever you have at home. Little raisins or marshmallows and toothpicks. You could give them a bowl if you have an older child, maybe closer to 4, 5, or 6. If you have a bowl of grapes, not raisins, sorry, grapes, or marshmallows, and you give them a whole pack of toothpicks and you say, how tall can you build or a tower using just that? That's play, that's construction. Building a snow fort here in Montreal now, we have lots of snow, asking them to help you build some sort of tunnel or a fort of some sort. Get them to build with you because there's so much planning that goes around that. And emotion regulation skills. When that tower falls and you have a toddler or preschooler that just gets really upset, that's perfect because that's your time to say, okay, I see that you're feeling really frustrated right now. I would too. I kind of feel upset because we've been building it for so long and it just fell. Oh my gosh. Okay, let's take a deep breath together. Okay, I feel a little bit better now. I'm still frustrated, and use the words with them. I feel disappointed too. I see that you're disappointed. You want to step away from it for a minute and then get back to it? Maybe we can draw out a plan or something, showing them or modeling these kinds of emotions through play is going to lead to another opportunity where you're outside and maybe another child took your child's toy or something broke or whatever it is. And you can say, remember when that tower fell? What did we do together? Yeah, we took a deep breath and then we counted to 3. Or it could be, I pretended to blow a balloon. We do that in my house to teach deep breath. So we go, and then we blow a big balloon. And sometimes my kids say, pop, it popped. And okay, we took our deep breaths and we feel better now. Let's move on. So there are lots of ways. And again, emotion regulation could be a whole topic, but there are lots of ways that we can help our child. And playing blocks is a big one. Sensory play. I don't know if you guys can give thumbs up on yours, but I'm curious to know if anybody uses sensory play in their home. So sensory play is a way that we could get them to touch different things, manipulate. It could be with dried beans, it could be with rice. And we have a tray in our home that is our sensory bin. It's the one that you see at the bottom right. And as of a few months or just under a year old, I stay with them because these are things that they can swallow. It helps me teach them not to put certain items in their mouths. And by repeating it, all 3, have learned, okay, this is playtime and this is not food time, even though they're food items. But you can keep a child safe. You can use Cheerios and baby cereal and dried oats. But just to say, when they're manipulating things, they're again building the awareness and understanding of the world around them and what things feel like. And it's relaxing because the sensation of it, the sensation parts of our brain, or the thalamus, is linked to our emotions. So for my kids, sometimes when things are getting a little bit chaotic, with 3, it happens like every day, we kind of go back to sensory play, whether it's Play-Doh or anything that you can manipulate. Our Play-Doh has it smells like lavender or strawberries that I have, so they kind of integrate all their senses, and all of a sudden everybody calms down a little bit. So it's a great way to include a bit of play, creativity. I give them trucks and animals, and they start playing pretend. So there's a lot that goes on into that. And the best part, again, when you let them play, you might have to play a little bit with them at the beginning, but then when you see they're kind of into their world, and like, and they're driving their truck, and they're pouring the oats or whatever it is, then you step back. And that's when the magic happens. That's when they're starting to learn to play independently. That's when they're building their focused attention. And that focused attention is going to make a difference when they're in school. So those are the sort of things that we are working on. And emotion regulation opportunities are everywhere. When, something spills, they might get mad. They might, if you've never introduced this to your child, they might think that it's okay to take a bunch of the beans and toss them to the ground. There are rules, and creating those boundaries is teaching them that discipline skill. So there are rules wherever we go, and you do it once, I give you one chance for success. We make it positive, right? You get that one chance, and I know you're going to do it. You got this. And if they do it again, I have to take it away. I explained the rules before we started this, and we take it away. And then you take it back out the next day, and they play. And if they toss the beans out, I know you can do this. I'm giving you one more chance for success. And then if they don't do it, and then you take it away, I guarantee you, after 2 times, they're probably going to say, like, this is not fun because my mom or my dad keeps taking it away. I need to follow the rules. And that's helping them, again, with that discipline aspect. Invitations to play. If you have trays, serving trays, the ones that you divide, that you put the dip in the middle with the vegetables all around, or the chips or the salsa, those are games, those are toys. I have mine here. I still have a jewel stuck to it because they were doing Valentine's Day cards, and I use this. Like I said, you probably have tons of amazing toys in your house. And this is from the dollar store, although it's $4. I don't know if your dollar store there is getting more expensive, but here in Montreal, everything is $4 now. But just to say, it's what I do. I put Play-Doh in the middle, just one color, like you see in the pictures. Then I'll put some like googly eyes, some buttons, some pipe cleaners or yarn, some animals or whatever it is. It takes me maybe 2 minutes to set up. And then all of a sudden, if you have a meeting one day and your kids are home, or if you had a rough night with your baby and you need your 3 and 5-year-old to stay entertained for a little bit so you could have a coffee and come back to normal life, you take this out and they're going to play, because they're going to say, wow, this is so inviting. It's exciting to see it. Any other trays that you have? I have a bunch of different trays that I get at the dollar store because I like to switch it up. It makes it fun. If we're playing restaurant or like a cooking sort of pretend play, I'll even take these out. I'll put vegetables in one, fruits in another. So as I'm speaking with them and playing with them, I'll say, an apple, is that a fruit or a vegetable? And they'll be like, fruit. Okay, let's put it in the fruit basket. And that way I'm interacting with them and they're learning at the same time. I'm homeschooling my 5-year-old, and the most common question I get is like, how do you manage to homeschool from 8 in the morning till 3 when you're home with a 1-year-old and a 3-year-old? And my answer is learning is throughout the day in different opportunities that I look for, and then actually sitting down is maybe half an hour, to practice writing skills and so on. But besides that, we learn through play. We're learning. If you see here a polar bear, I might prepare the night before and just print out a sheet because I really don't remember the facts about polar bears. But I might say, okay, like, what does it eat? How does it sleep? What does it do? And then that conversation happens while I'm playing with them. And again, if I see they're involved and all of a sudden they're playing and they have their Play-Doh and they put the little cubes and they're into it, I step back and the magic happens. Loose parts play is something that I only learned after I had kids. There's like, I had no idea there was research around this, but basically random objects around your house, you can buy loose parts like I have here in the picture. I'm on Instagram, so you have to make it look good. But then the middle picture is just your random home stuff, Tupperwares or wooden spoons or spatulas, trays like ice cube trays that you have. old silk scarves, little blankets, measuring cups, measuring spoons. These are all loose parts, meaning that there's no specific function. It's that kind of open-endedness again, but it allows your child, a baby, this is what I would give my baby. These are my baby's toys. I wouldn't put all of them. I would put 2 or 3. And all of a sudden he would put like one of his toys inside the container and then take it out and dump it in the basket and then try to fit it in the measuring cup and then empty it out. He's learning about his environment. And then these same sort of things are used with my 3 and my 5-year-olds, because now on the picture on the right, this was our coffee shop setup. So I have like a mini muffin tin that I bought at the dollar store, and they use that. It's still in their play area. They use it so much, and it could be just to put, I have cotton balls. Sometimes I put cotton balls in one of these random little baskets with that tray, and all of a sudden they're making little snowmen, or they're pretending that they're putting icing on it, and they're making a cupcake, and they put that muffin tin into their kitchen. So it's really easy things that we have in our home. Reading, I think we all know the importance of reading as of birth, but for those of you who have older children, all I want to say in terms of reading is when you ask questions, so it's not just about reading the book, but follow through. You can ask questions like, before turning the page, if it's a new book, what do you think would happen? What do you think will happen? Or how do you think that character feels? And there are books like What Would Danny Do? That actually integrate that into the book, and they stop and the child has to choose, how would the child react, if his brother stole his toy? Should he scream and kick him? Or should he stay calm and tell his mom? So there are ways that we can use reading, and not only just for letting them learn how to focus and read and those skills that they'll learn later, but also memory. Like, do you remember when you finished reading the book and you're sitting at the table? We do that in our home. Hey, we read a story about Danny. What happened in the story? And then we have our children recount the stories. And then you create your own games. Reading is not just about reading the book, but it's that creativity too. You could say, oh, well, yeah, Danny chose to go see his mom. What if he would have kicked his brother? What do you think would have happened? And then we kind of build our own story. So story time, again, is all around us. And you could be in a car and your baby's crying. This is a true story. And you're like, oh, guys, remember that book we read about the hippopotamus? Yeah. And then you're like, okay, you remember that he got hurt and then he was crying and then his mom helped him? Yeah. Okay. How could we have helped him? What could we have done? Or whatever it is. There are lots of ways to include story time throughout our days. Simon Says, the most underrated game. We have to bring it back. I have to make it popular again. There are so many skills, so many cognitive skills in Simon Says, because it's hard. So Simon Says, touch your nose means you touch it. If you don't say the words Simon Says first and you say touch your nose and your child does it, they're eliminated. That is really difficult because, and there are cognitive skills that they use in neuroscience to test patients. And it's a kind of like a mimic game of Simon Says, but it's hard because your brain automatically hears touch your nose. So your brain says, go touch it. And then your other part of the brain has to say, don't do it. So it's really complicated for young kids. And getting them to learn how to inhibit, this is called inhibition, leads to also less tantrums because it's emotion regulation. It's saying, okay, when I'm really, really mad at somebody, I'm going to focus in on like something. So let's say I'm not going to focus on the being mad anymore, but I'm going to focus on the thing that could help me be happier or snap out of that emotion. So there's a lot of inhibition that happens throughout our day. And depending on how old your children are, when mine were younger, closer to 2 or 3, I created, there's a task in research called the night and day task. So they just show a picture to a child that's daytime and another picture that's nighttime. When I show you daytime, you have to say nighttime. And when I show you nighttime, you have to say daytime, and they hide it behind their backs. Well, you could do the same thing with 2 toys. You can take like a zebra and a cow and hide them behind your back. And when you show the zebra, they have to say cow. So that's a little way of introducing the inhibition without doing Simon Says. And then slowly, as they get better at that, then bring in the game Simon Says. How long was I? I think I've already been talking too long. Pretend play. I'll go through the last slides. And then basically, if you have any questions around different types of play, let me know. With pretend play, basically, if you could see here, it has every single thing that I had under cognitive learning because it touches upon everything: creativity, resilience. And it all has to do with, one, them playing on their own when they're playing with another child, or even on their own, they're building that sort of ability to create and to create that imagination, that world. Discipline, they could be playing with somebody and get upset if they're not doing what they want. And there's a lot of learning around that, even with us. And I even put gratitude and all that, because pretend play for me in my home, it's also when, if my 5-year-old are experiencing some difficulties, whether it's sharing, whether it's communicating something, that's when I step in. So that's when I come in and say, hey, let's play with your stuffed animals or your dolls, or your whatever it is, your action figurines. And then whatever happened in our home becomes a situation that I reenact with their stuffed animals or their figurines. And that's when you could use this to build resilience and emotional skills and growth mindset, because you might say, oh, Batman is really disappointed because his sister wasn't sharing with him. What can Spider-Man do to help Batman? Well, and then my kids will start that conversation. Well, Spider-Man can give him a hug. Yeah, that's a good start. Let's give him a hug. Let's invite him to play with us rather than letting him play there, or I might, whatever the situation is, you can recreate it through pretend play. So besides all the other benefits, I often like to talk to parents about this aspect, because that's our role. Social emotional skills and all these skills won't develop on their own. The environment plays a big part of it. So that's when we step in to help them. Risk-taking and outdoor play, there's a lot of research around this, and especially with dads. It might not be that all dads are this way or moms are less risk-taking, but in my situation, that I'm the one who's like, don't do that, and then my husband's like, just go. So that's just in my home. But I love that the research shows that there's such a difference between how mothers are and how fathers are, and how, when it comes to risk-taking, the dads have a role. And I put all of the skills again, because outdoor play and risk-taking, that builds the resilience. So part of the research is very strong on a child's growth mindset, their motivation, and their resilience. So those 3 things when it comes to risk-taking. Going to the park and jumping off the taller step, sliding down the taller slide, all of those, that's when the language and the communication that you have between you and your child, and that's all play, but that's when you're going to build that sort of, okay, brave, let's be brave. How can we, what can you do right now to help yourself be brave? Or do you want to start at the lower one and then make it to the top? Because I know you could do it. Little things like that are what leads to this intrinsic motivation, this mindset, and this resilience. They might say things like, I can't do it, I'm not good enough, I'm not tall enough. Or, they see their older sibling do it and they're like, oh, but I'll never do it like them. And that's when we step in and we say, you whatever it is, but you have to have those conversations during playtime. Those are the best times. Following rules. This is a huge part of cognitive development. This could be as simple as a 1-step rule for a 2 or 3-year-old, which is just because I have a jewel. Okay, we're going to play a game. Can you take all the jewels that are in this basket, and let's walk to the other side of the living room and just drop them in this basket. That's actually 2 steps. So that's a game that is simple. Anything that you have in your home, a ball, creating those games with rules, board games. There are board games that you can start as young as 2 years old. And if you want, you can send Pooja a question. I'll put a list together if you need it, or email me. But basically, there are lots of ways that we can teach a child, one, to follow rules. And it's not just about the rule, but it's about steps. So step 1, I need to do that. For example, when you tell your child, get dressed, we need to leave for school. Okay, that's a lot of steps. What is get dressed? I have to put on, okay, my pants, my shirt, my shoes, my socks. Did I forget socks? So there's a lot of thinking, memorizing, not memorizing, but remembering what that involves. Do I have my school bag? Do I have did I do my homework? Did I put it away in my school bag? So there's a lot, and all those skills of planning, which are all executive function skills, fall under following rules for a game. So this is very important as well. And arts and crafts, again, the arts and crafts, I just wanted to point out this sentence here in the green box. It's not about perfection. Forget about those Instagram pictures that we see of the most beautiful butterfly and the sparkles at the right place. The sparkles are going to end up on the floor. That's how it is in my house. And that's okay. For me, I always take out that sort of tray the tray that I have here, and I'll cut small pieces of paper. I'll put some stickers here. I'll put glue and some scissors and some yarn or stamps or hole punchers, whatever I have. And I'll just put a few, and that's our arts and crafts activity. Sometimes I'll say, can we draw the family, or can we draw a butterfly? And whatever they drew, that's perfect. I don't say, no, or no, that's not a butterfly. It's fine. It's about the freedom at that moment and showing them that they can build whatever they want, and not just saying good job. And this is where cognitive skills come in for arts and crafts. It's because good job, you drew, I don't know, a person, let's say, that's just ahead. Well, okay, good job. It is a good job. But then when it comes to something bigger, and we've been saying good job since they were young and they're older, and it's like, Mom, I got accepted into my doctorate. And you say, good job. There's a difference, right? So we want to make sure that we break it up and be more specific when we give feedback. And there's research that in schools that showed that when a teacher was more specific, rather than just adding a grade, but when they were specific in saying, you've improved in this and try working more on this, that's what led to learning, stronger learning. So same thing applies with our kids. You could say, hey, I noticed that your lines or your circles are tighter, or I really like the color that you chose. So these are the types of things that lead to more learning in arts and crafts, not the beautiful butterfly. and other ways, we could have spoken about play for so long. I told you it's something I'm super passionate about, but boredom's important. It's okay to be bored, because that's when they have to build their creativity skills. What do you do when you're bored? If you've created an environment that's minimalistic, that has these sorts of things, these baskets, these random trays and muffin tins and little pieces of wood and building blocks and whatever it is, that environment, when they're bored, will lead to creativity and will lead to building skills that are important. Cooking and baking with you whenever possible. I know it's not every day. There are toddler knives. My all three kids participate in cooking. Even my 19-month-old, it's called like a wavy knife, and he can only chop like very soft vegetables or fruit, and it cuts it wavy. I think it's called a wavy knife. That's what it is on Amazon. And you can search on Amazon for toddler knives. They only cut soft things, and basically while I'm preparing supper, they chop some soft vegetables, some cucumbers or some fruit, some melon, watermelon, or whatever it is that they can use their knives with, and they participate. And there's no screen time for us, during meal prep or even eating. And that way they get involved and they like that. Playtime can also be giving your child a spray bottle with water and a face cloth or whatever cloth. And while you're cooking or cleaning, you can say, can you help me? Can you clean the cupboards? And it's just water, but they become so engaged and they love it because they're participating with you. And there's lots of learning that goes around that, and you gave them an instruction. Remember the executive functions? So you're saying, can you take this cloth and this spray bottle? And you can say, can you clean the windows first? And when you're done, can you clean the cupboards? Can you help me clean the cupboards? Those are steps. And as they get better at that, you can say, and then when you're done, can you just dust the steps for me, or whatever it is? It's building those cognitive skills. Singing with movements for young babies, obstacle courses are amazing, and obstacle courses don't have to be hard. You can take all your dining room table chairs and line them up, and they have to crawl under it, and then you place a pillow at the end that they have to jump on, and then you take some painter's tape and you draw out a square or a bunch of squares or a line on your floor, and they have to walk on the line and then jump into the square. So there are lots of ways. Painter's tape, I buy them by the dozen, because we're just using it all the time, different colors. If you have to jump over a red line, you have to do something different, versus if you have to jump over the green line, you might have to touch your nose. So then that's all going back to executive function skills. Quiet time activities, it's puzzles and beads and logic games where they have to be on their own and kind of think things through before bedtime is what we do here. Lots of puzzles before bedtime. And I wonder why. Going back to you being the most important person, just questioning throughout their day is about play. That's it. So if any of you have any questions, Curious Neuron has a lot of resources. We are a main resource for parents in the sense that you can learn through either Instagram or blog post or podcast. We also have a weekly parenting support group, and we have parenting programs. So I guide parents if there's a play program, tantrums, and parenting styles, and we help you through that as well, and a monthly membership. So I hope that you guys learned something about play.
Awesome. So thank you so much, first of all, Cindy. I think that was like so much information. And I love it.
Sorry, maybe too much.
No, I loved it. I loved in particular, like two things for me that were like pretty strong was one was like the minimalist side. I thought that was like a really insightful message. And then the other was this like entertainment versus interaction. I thought that versus play rather. Yeah. And I really love that distinction too. I thought both were so helpful.
Thank you.
I had a few follow-ups. So one question that a parent had submitted was around their child being kind of fearful. So it kind of has to do with the risk taking that you were talking about. And kind of like how you then how to go about it, encourage that risk-taking behavior.
Yeah, that's a good question, because a child's temperament and their personality will have a huge role in that as well. And I forget, but there was a study that showed it spoke about dads, and that there's almost like a fine line between pushing too much to take a risk that pushes a child towards more fear. But it's funny because some studies, like, they'll tell you that and you're like, okay, but what's the answer? Like, what do I do? What do I do? Like, I know that, but and I think for me, it's just always about small steps, taking it back, whatever the fear is. If it's about heights, I mean, I know that I can't help my kids because I stand on a chair and that's too high for me. So it's hard because that also plays a factor too, right? But if it's about jumping off of something, I would do it. You just put like a piece of wood or something that's 2 inches off the floor and starting with that. And until they're super comfortable with that, then I wouldn't move higher until you want to bring it down many levels so that you can build their confidence, build their resilience skills and their internal talk and become that positive voice in their mind, and then make it a little bit more complicated. Once they're jumping off a piece of wood that's on the grass, and it's only 1 or 2 inches, and you're like, wow, you did it. Can you do it with 1 foot? And then they do it and you're like, what? I can't believe you just did that. And then you go to like somewhere at the park that's a little bit higher, like a foot higher. And then you start there. So I would really, if you want them to build those skills, just start off from something that seems so ridiculously simple to us. But to them, it's a way of building their confidence.
Yeah, I think tiering is really helpful.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And the scaffolding, yeah, exactly. It's like building the steps for them. Okay, I'm glad. Thanks, Emily and Shauna. Okay, so now incredibly list of ideas and strategies would be most appreciated. Okay, yeah, so I guess I'll send you that.
They're all compliments. Very exciting. Okay. If anyone has to
send me an email because I'll forget. Simplicity is important, and remembering to have fun. Yes, exactly. And get messy with them. I know that sometimes you don't like that. In the summer, we have this big sensory bin outside, and that's when I do my most messiest kind of play with them, shaving cream and foam and color and whatever it is. But it's funny because I would step back. Usually I would prepare it and be like, isn't that fun? And then last summer, my daughter's like, yeah, but put your hands in it. I was like, oh yeah. And I just like, whoop, I went inside and I put my hands. I was like, wait a second, this is so relaxing. And it's true. They teach us to have that fun. Let's see. Okay, here. How do you approach a very self-directed child who only wants to play with things in their own way and in their own own time? That's a very good question. Okay. Again, it's going back to small steps, and I think that's going to be very closely related to emotion regulation skills, because you're going to say something or want to do something, and that's going to lead to them kind of perhaps having a tantrum or losing control of their emotions. I would start with pretend play with stuffed animals, so that you kind of show them, what happens, or is what 2 situations. What's happening when one stuffed animal doesn't want to do it their way, like the negative aspect of it, like I want to play with you, but I also want to play my way. I would demonstrate it with stuffed animals or figurines, and then showing how happy they both are when they take turns to play their own way and play with their own toy. So I would demonstrate it a little bit with that. And then through mealtime or whatever, come back to the situation and say, you know, wasn't it fun when Batman was sharing with Spider-Man and they were playing their own games together? They took turns, and then they might say yes. And then you might have to model it a couple more times. And then when it comes to your turn, you might say, okay, can we play with your pretend play kitchen? And they might say, no, I want to play with whatever, my veterinarian set. And you might say, remember how it made Batman feel? Well, I kind of feel the same because I enjoyed playing your game before, but let's play a little bit of mine, and slowly getting into it that way. And again, it's going to be modeling their emotions, you know, saying, I know you feel disappointed because you want to play your game, but it's really fun to play together. Let's play a kitchen because I would like to play it, but you tell me which food items you want to take out. So incorporating them in some decisions as well. But could you suggest activities to practice writing? Oh yeah, so practicing writing depends how old the child is, but activities standing up first, like against so there's a wall behind me, and we have I don't know if you can see it. There's a whiteboard. So, and it's low because my baby uses it as well. And then once they're all too tall, I'll put it higher. But I have a whiteboard that's stuck to the wall because that's writing skills. Before you practice anything with writing, the muscles have to be strong enough in the wrist. And we don't think about that pre-step. So it's about doing lots of vertical play, and you know, whether it's just putting magnetic pieces for my 1-year-old or drawing for my older kids. So that's the step 0 before step 1. And then it's about learning lines. So we have, hold on. So I have like a big tray like this, and I might put some cornmeal or some sand that I have. And then it's going to be about practicing straight lines. So with your finger, not even holding anything yet. So first you're learning about lines, then you'll practice circles, then you'll practice wavy, and you're putting just a little bit, just dusting the bottom really, and you're having them practice different shapes. It could be a V shape. So getting comfortable with the different shapes that letters have. And then once you've done that, then incorporating holding a pencil and holding a marker or a pen or whatever it is. You know, you can do activities where you're, again, just drawing on the whiteboard, but you're building those muscles. And then you bring the pen to the paper and start showing them different letters. I don't know which step you're at. I don't know if that was helpful to you, but there's so many steps before learning how to actually write some letters, like the pre-steps. It's a big topic and probably not to be answered in the last 5 minutes, but your thoughts on how screen time can fit. Yeah, sure. We could in a few minutes or just a few seconds, but so I like screen time when it complements it. So when it comes to play, so in my home, we look at old shows like Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood, Mr. Dress Up. I don't know if you guys had those, but basically so I'm 37, and in my day, the shows were much slower. Everything it was almost like they would film you, and then you'd be walking and say, "Hi kids, we're gonna draw a picture," and then they're kind of boring for our generation now because you're like, everything's so fast, but it's slow. And what's nice is I use these TV shows that you can find on YouTube to, they always have like an arts activity or a story that they tell or some sort of pretend play. And then I could include that in my day and say, okay, Mr. Dress Up, he played this game. Let's play that game as well. I mean, in terms of the bigger picture, in our home, screen time is minimal. It's used, you know, really when there's an emergency of like, mommy can't function today because I still have a 1-year-old that wakes up a couple times a night. But besides that, I don't know if I answered it, but that's the way that we use it in our home. Yeah, how do you support a child who seems to move from one activity to another before completing it? Oh yeah, I don't know if it's minimizing allows a child to focus in a little bit longer. And then also scaffolding play. I don't know, let's take an example of Play-Doh. With my kids, if I put 5 colors of Play-Doh and then all of the Play-Doh items, the little scissors and whatever, the roller, they're going to play a little bit and then be bored and leave. But if I scaffold, if I create steps and I just give them 1 color, and then I give them the little rolling pin and 1 little stamper thing, And then after I see that they're like, okay, we're done, and they're about to move, I'll say, oh, wait a second, I have also the pizza roller and I have another color. And then I bring them back, and that kind of brings them back. And they're like, oh yeah, we can make pizza or cookies because now we have 2 colors. So I try to minimize what I offer them and then slowly bring in other things to help them out. That's it. Oh, I don't hear you. Wait, I don't hear you. Did I block you?
Still on mute. No, it's
Oh,
not you.
okay.
It was all me. I was
Yeah.
just saying that the second part of the question was around giving up when they're stuck. So do you have like suggestions around helping your child persevere?
Yeah, so well, it goes back to how we speak to them, and little bits of info that we give them throughout their day too. Modeling helps a lot. So if I'm cooking something and it burns, or I forget an ingredient and it's not exactly what it is, it's like I narrate my brain. My brain is outside of my head with my kids, just because then it allows them to see what happens. And I find that when you're stuck with a child with a certain behavior, I do it 10 times more in my environment with myself. So if I'm stuck, if I'm doing work and I'm like, this is not working, I'll ask them to come and I'll say, look, my computer's not working right now and I'm feeling frustrated and I want to just shut it down and say like, computer, but let's try to figure it out. And I had them sit on my lap, and they might not understand what I'm doing, but they're seeing the steps that you do when you're frustrated or disappointed, and that's what leads to conversations around the times that they are frustrated. And I can say, remember when you saw mommy at my computer, or you saw me cooking and I just destroyed the entire meal? What did mommy do? And then that's the conversation that we can have, and sometimes that helps. Are there ways to increase buy-in for play over? I'm not sure. Increase buy-in for play over academics with teachers. I'm not sure I understand the last question.
I think the meaning is basically like how for teachers, how do you, like when they're in school, for example, how do you communicate to them that you would like to have something more play-based or, child-centered as opposed to something more academic?
Oh, that's hard. That's a big conversation. Yeah, that's our whole academic. I don't know how it is with you. Are people mostly from the UK here or from this? Yeah, I don't know. Anyways, but I know that. Yeah, a mix. Yeah, it's hard. There are some studies. I sometimes I tell parents like, let me send you a few studies, but it's besides having the conversation, I don't know what else. There's so much research there. Even when you Google play and learning, just that brings you like to these the American Association of Pediatrics. They have like this note saying how important it is. I just more conversation has to have, and has to happen. It's a big question.
Yeah, the last question I had, which a few people had asked in the registration the last 3 minutes, was around ways to like participate in play without directing. So you had mentioned like one of the things was like you see that something's about to fall and you like really want to fix it or tell them not to do it. But I, for example, I find myself like catching myself asking like too many questions sometimes.
Oh yeah.
What are you doing there? And it's just like almost distracting. It's like a constant narration. So like you have suggestions on just like ways to participate, how much of that questioning is like appropriate, when you should just be quiet and watch, like all of that.
I forget there was a ratio that there was a speech language pathologist. I think it was like I forget what the ratio was. Anyways, but basically, if you're aware of you're questioning a lot, that's already a good first step. But yes, narrating is the way to go about it. It's just like, oh, okay, you chose that one, you chose that. You're making, what are you making? You can ask questions, but then just stepping back and waiting for them to come back to you for a conversation. So if you ask a question, just wait a little bit before the next one. But that really is the way to participate with them, is just allowing them to tell you, okay, you're going to be the veterinarian, I'm going to be the pet, or I'm going to be the person that brings in their pet, whatever it is. And then going along with it, because when we start kind of controlling the environment and or telling them this is wrong or this is right, or that's not a telephone, that's the remote control for the TV, it doesn't matter. it's nice to kind of let them guide the way, and narrating, yes, and like you said, questioning, but try to just be mindful of it, and ask, like when you ask a question, and just wait a bit before asking another one. There's no really set formula, but those are all the steps to playing with them.
Last question in the last minute was, we got a question around how to encourage literacy without necessarily reading, like literacy skills without necessarily.
Oh yeah, okay. That's an amazing question. That's hard, however possible, because there are books like Good Night Gorilla. There are no words in them, and it's a book. We don't have to, if a parent has some issues or with reading or literacy issues, that it's okay. Your child will still learn if they are around font, like print. And not only that, the reading part, there's, remember, focused attention. So just the fact that they're sitting on your lap and you're looking at pictures, you can create your own story. There's that creativity aspect. You could have them, if it's a baby, pointing and naming different things. And then when they're older and 2 and 3 years old, and they're building those communication skills, saying, what is this? And then they say, it's the lion. And this is, or what is the lion doing? The lion is eating. They're learning that language skill, and that's going to lead to understanding, when they're reading. And songs, their literacy is not just about what we read and the letters, it's about what they hear. Songs that rhyme, songs with actions, and those will help, because the rhyming helps with learning how to read later on. So there's a lot more to just the reading.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much, Cindy.
Thank you, Pooja.
I thought that was so packed full of valuable information. Just for everyone on here, this has been recorded. If you signed up for our email list, it'll be sent to you along with a recap of the session and like the kind of top tips that were covered. So watch your inbox for that. Otherwise, thank you so much for joining. And thank you so much for being here, Cindy, and sharing your
Thank you, all of you. Thank you for having me.
Okay.
Take care.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.